Hello and welcome to Mostly Vintage Cameras. Today we're going to look at how to load a film into the very popular Olympus Trip35. It's pretty straightforward, but as it is a design that dates back to the 1960s, it's worthwhile paying a little extra attention to one or two points. So the camera can take any type of 35mm film, so that could be colour negative like this Porsche 160. It could be black and white negative or transparency. Choice is entirely yours. The camera will generally work with any film from 50 ASA, or these days ISO, to 400 ISO. There are one or two very early Olympus Trip35s where the ISO scale only runs up to 200. So if you've just got the camera or you haven't used it for a while, just worth checking if your maximum ISO or ASA setting is 200 or 400. So this particular film, as we can see, is 160 ISO, and the ISO scale is just here around the lens, and this knurled ring is where we change it. So currently it reads 400, 320, 250, 200, 160. While I've got the camera here, I'm going to take the automatic exposure off and turn it to manual exposure. Doesn't really matter where on that scale. The reason being that if I leave it in A, the shutter, oops, just to prove me wrong, if I cover that over, the shutter won't always fire if it's too dark to take an exposure. We're not trying to take exposures, we're just wanting to load the film. So if I take that off A, I know I'm not going to have that problem. So open the camera back, just pull down on this tab on the side here, should open with a good deal of positivity. Now there's two ways of loading this camera in actual fact. There's the way the instruction book would have said, and then there's the way I would recommend. I'll show you the instruction book way first. You pop open the rewind release crank, or the rewind crank, put the film in the film chamber, drop the crank down, and then take the film leader, pull it out, put it into the take up spool slot, fire the shutter, wind on, this is a little bit fiddly, and you just want to make sure that these perforations are engaged in the teeth, in the sprocket teeth. Having done that, close the back, take two more exposures, reset the camera to automatic, and you're away to take pictures. Now let me just take the film out of here and I'll show you a slightly easier way, at least to my thinking, to rewind the film. Once you've taken all your pictures ordinarily, you push the button in on the base plate and you turn the crank in the direction of the arrow, and I've just stopped when it became loose because I didn't want to wind the film leader all the way back into the film cassette, and then that pops up. So the way I would suggest you do this, which is almost identical, again we take the exposure setting off of A, open the camera back, pop the rewind crank out the way. I would start by taking the film leader between your finger and thumb, forefinger and thumb, stuffing that securely into the take-up spool, and you can see whereas before we had a lot of film bowing out as we tried to feed it from one side to the other, now it sits more flush, it's easier to see it's engaged. And I would also at this point, without pressing the button, just take up the slack in the rewind crank. So now when we take our next two shots, we can see the rewind crank is turning because we're pulling film around this, which is turning that crank. That just confirms that the film's moving through the camera correctly. And always remember to reset the exposure setting to A. So that basically is 2 ways of loading a film into an Olympus Trip. I hope somebody's found this useful or enjoyable, and thank you for watching. I do appreciate it, and do have a good day.